Hello everyone, welcome back. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share these videos. It really helps the channel a lot. You can always check out the Wizard Golf Lessons playlist by clicking the icon here or clicking the link in the description. And if you'd like to support the channel, there are links in the description for that also. So our last section involved wedges or short approaches, just longer than pitches, something between 50 and maybe 100 or 120 yards. And this involved an extension of our pitch swing and utilizing half and three-quarter swings to gauge distances and then spread those different swings across our different clubs so we can have multiple options from different distances. So now we're moving on from the wedge approaches into short approaches, or your regular approaches into greens, where you're typically going to have a little bit longer than you can reach it with a wedge. So you're going to have to use, say, pitching wedge or a 9-iron, 8-iron, and maybe even a 7-iron. So here I'm talking about short, relatively short approaches, not long irons. Usually these are going to be clubs between a pitching wedge and a 7-iron. We'll call these the approach irons. They're relatively high lofted and not quite long irons. And we're still close enough to the hole where we can actually try to get the ball somewhat close. I would say the distances are going to vary, but depending on how strong you are and how far you hit your balls, but somewhere between 75 and 150 yards. Something like this is going to be the short approaches where we can still try to get the ball relatively close to the hole. So as you know, I've been playing for many years now, and golf is such a difficult game to learn. You have to acquire so many skills before you can actually start to play well, and this can take many years of practice and research and training. And it took me a long time to figure out that it's a lot easier to play golf if we throttle down, if you don't try to hit it as hard as you can and as close as you can at the same time. There's a time to hit it hard and swing fast, and there are other times where you want to swing more controlledly. It's really no different than driving your car. You can't just drive wide open all the time. You have to approach the traffic lights and stop signs and slow down and yield to the other traffic. You can't just pedal to the metal, balls to the wall, just wide open all the time. And golf is kind of the same way, but most of the time when I play with my friends and colleagues and they play, they know one distance for one club, and that's their max distance. Say one time they hit a 7-iron 160 yards and they carried it that far, and so that's how far they play it. So when they're at 160 yards, they just grab the 7-iron and hope for the best. And this is just not the way to play the game and make it easy for us. We don't want to play at perfection level. We want to play short of that so we can increase the chances that we actually hit the ball where we want to by swinging slightly slower and more controlled. If we swing slower, we're usually going to have more control, our body sequencing is going to be better, and we're likely to make better contact, which will then deliver the ball the distance that we need and in the direction that we want it to go. So I highly recommend toning your approach shots down. This goes even without changing anything in your swing, trying to make better motions, movements, moving your body in a more efficient way. Even without all that, if you would just swing between 70 and 85%, something like that, where you're making a full swing, but you're not trying to go after it, but you're making a nice solid swing, just toning it down, prioritizing contact and good body motions and efficiency, and not prioritizing power. And swing like this, and then measure your distance of how far you carry it with that swing. This is the swing you want on your approach swing, because it's very difficult to swing wide open and controlled simultaneously. And when we're trying to approach the ball in these short approaches, the goal is to try to get the ball as close to the hole as possible. We're trying to hit it onto the green and then close to the hole. So accuracy is kind of a premium. Not so much the distance, but rather distance control is more important, say, than hitting it as hard as you can. So in these short approaches, you really want to think, swing it easier so that you can make good contact. Making good contact will get you closer to the hole. My max carry with my 9-iron is about 150 yards, maybe a little over that, 152 or so. And I'm talking about a full swing, a flush contact. It will fly in the air with no wind, about 150 yards. But when I'm on the golf course and I laser the flagstick at 150, I don't just automatically pull the 9-iron because there may be other variables involved. Maybe there's water up front, maybe there's bunkers up in the front, maybe I don't have, I have to make sure that I get it there. I can't err on the short side, so I need it to go farther. Instead of hitting the 9, maybe I'll hit the 7 softer, or even the 8, depending on the situation. But rarely am I actually trying to hit my max distance with my approach iron. It just doesn't work out so well. It's much easier for me to take the same 150 yards and swing it softer with an 8, make good contact, and that way I know that even if I miss it a little bit, it's still going to get onto the green likely. Much more likely than it would for me trying to hit a 9-iron at 100% at my maximum capacity. So this is the way I play the game now. It's much easier, stress-free. So I highly recommend, if you're not already doing so, really be honest with yourself about how far you carry your irons. It's not about how far you carry them, it's about how far you know you carry them and how consistently you can carry it that distance. It doesn't really matter how far you carry the clubs. Like I said, what really matters is your ability to repeat that distance at a given situation. So just so you know, I told you my max distance with my 9-iron is 150. So I know that I can hit it that far, and if I need to, I have that option in the bag. Although that's going to be a perfect shot, difficult to pull off in some situations. So I play my 9-iron between 130 and 140 yards. That's a great distance for my 9-iron because I can still fly at that distance relatively easily. I don't have to hit it perfect. I don't have to swing wide open. And I can play the shot there with a smaller swing, make better contact, and my dispersion, instead of being this big, is now this big. So your dispersion will be better, your shot patterns will be better with a softer swing. I highly recommend this. This doesn't even necessitate that you change any part of your swing. Just swing it a bit easier, prioritize contact, and then take your distances and measurements from there. It's going to feel like 80% of your power, maybe 75, whatever that number is, but just less than full. I mean, you really want to consider your short approach shots with your 9-iron, your 8-iron, with these short approach irons, pitching wedge, the same way you would the short wedges, and have those different distances so you're very versatile on the course. Have a half swing with a 9-iron, 3/4 swing with your 9-iron, and then your full shot. And have these across these short iron clubs because it's going to extend your ability to hit certain distances on the course when you need them. This short iron approach is really going to be just an extension of our pitching, an extension of the short wedges. We're just changing clubs so that we can hit it a little bit further, but the technique will be very much the same. So we still need to go over the essentials, and we'll start with the grip. I know I go over this every time, but it is important. If you haven't already checked it out, please check out the grip lesson. It's lesson 1. We'll teach you all about that aspect and also how to use this golf club as a lever. We want our grip relatively neutral to start, so that means the club face is going to be vertical. The balls always take off at 90 degrees to the club face, and we want the club very much in the fingers so that the club can release, not so much in the hand. You don't want the club coming through much to the palm of your hand, more so through the fingers. Of course, any grip is variable, and the grip does change from shot to shot. As a general rule, the more that the club is in the hand, the less rotation the club will have and less movement it will have. It's very hard to turn the club over when it's through my hand. But if it's in my fingers, now my wrist becomes much more mobile, and I can move the club a lot better. It's difficult for me to make that motion when the club is through the hand as opposed to the fingers. So we definitely want it in the fingers. You ought to be able to support the club like this with the pad. So you're supporting this shaft and this lever with another lever here. And then the right hand goes on like this. We also have 3 different positions where we can grip the club all the way out towards the end, towards the butt of the club, in the middle, where I have equal parts on either side of my hands, and towards the shaft at the bottom of the grip, more towards the club head. So gripping it short. Most of my short approaches, I play gripping it short, and I can adjust this as needed Usually the further away our hands are from the club head, the more power we'll have, the longer the lever will be, the more weight the club head will have, so we can accelerate it a little bit faster, and we'll be a little bit heavier, but we can also have that extra lever, so it will tend to go a little bit further and higher with more spin. The shorter you grab it, usually the lower trajectory, the less spin, and the less power, but the more control. So when I'm playing my short approach shots, I usually play them gripped down because control is usually a priority for me. I want to hit it more straight than I'm trying to hit it far. If I need to hit it further, I'll just take another club. So normally I grip it choked down, as they say, or choked up if you want, whatever, but more towards the shaft, away from the club, away from the butt of the club, and then taking swings like this, because this provides me a lot of control and feel. You will hit the ball a little bit better, your contact will be better because your hands are just closer to the club head. Now we'll talk about stance and posture. To hit most of my short approaches, I stand with an open stance with the hips slightly open because I'm not trying to get that much power. I don't need that much back turn. And just like the wedge shots, we want to think of this as going like this. So having a relatively open stance for these shots is helpful to hitting it close and keeping our swing path straight. A little bit of an open stance. Hips open, but upper body square to the target. I'll show you from this position. Also notice my posture here. I have the club coming out of my gut, pointing at my gut, my solar plexus. It's about 90 degrees to my spine. From here I can bend over and put the club on the ground, find how far away I need the ball from me. Take my stance, and notice here that how straight my back is on my posture, how my pelvis is rotated back a little bit, not tucked under and straight. I'm not standing at the ball like this, but rather like this. This enables me to move and balance. It's difficult to turn backwards and make this motion when the pelvis is tucked under and the back is rounded. When the back is rounded, it's a lot harder to make this turn backwards. Just by tucking my pelvis under, I can rotate a lot further than I would here. So pulling your pelvis out some, backwards like this, having a slight roundedness in your spine so you can straighten your back up and be very strong. Your legs can be relatively straight because now you have plenty of rearward mass to counteract the fact that you're bending over. So this is going to be a nice posture to hit this shot. Now balance and weight distribution. For your short iron approaches, we're going to have our weight a little bit more centered than we did on the wedges. On the wedges we were a little bit more forward and driving down into it with the hips, sort of like this. On these shots we will be slightly like that, but not nearly as much more balanced, much more in the middle. Our weight distribution is going to be about centered, 50-50. I like this position, it's kind of neutral. Of course this is all dependent on the lie. We're just talking about general, basic, standard default positions. You are going to have to modify and change this depending on where you are, the lie, the wind, I mean, many different variables. But as a standard, we want to be more centered in our position on these short iron approaches and not either too much back or forward. Also, not too much rearward spinal tilt either, nor do we want to be forward this way. Just very neutral. Maybe a slight tilt behind the ball is helpful, but definitely not too much, but just slightly. And now lastly, we'll talk about ball position. Ball position is certainly a very important part of your golf swing. You can have a great golf swing, but if the ball is not even in position where you can hit it, then the swing won't even matter. If you can't reach the ball, or if it's too close, or if it's too far forward or backwards, it'll be difficult to put the club on the ball. Your ball position need be, generally speaking, somewhere under your head, somewhere in this space straight down. So you have a little bit of room to play here. You can have it slightly on this side towards the rear or slightly forwards, but it needs to be pretty much under your face. When you put the ball under your head this way, front and back, then it's going to be in a good place for you to be able to get the club on it, because the club usually is going to bottom out somewhere under our head, somewhere under our center. So the club is going to bottom out somewhere here. So putting the ball there is going to help me get the club on the ball where the club is bottoming out or still traveling slightly downward. These are short irons, so we do need the club traveling slightly downward. So as a part of your setup and your ball position, you definitely want to make sure that the hands are slightly ahead of the club head. We do not want to set up with the hands behind the club head. This is going to make it very challenging to hit the ball. The balls need to be hit with the hands slightly ahead of the club head for any club that you're trying to hit off the ground. The longer the iron, the less the loft, the more you can play the shaft more vertical. But for these shorter irons, they work much better, and it's much easier to hit if we have the shaft slightly forward with a forward shaft lean. And we do this by changing our ball position. So in this ball position, you see I have a slight forward shaft lean here, and the ball is positioned somewhere around right here, which is going to be just behind the middle of my stance, just on this side of my face. But I could also place the ball here, where I've moved it up now about 2 or 3 inches, and now you can see that the shaft is much more vertical there. So if I were to hit the ball here, the trajectory is going to be a little bit higher, and the club head is not going to be traveling nearly as downward. It might be even more shallow, and at this point it might even be coming up slightly, because it seems like it's quite a bit forward for this iron. I would have to really be traveling forward to get this to be traveling level at that point. So if you have the ball too far forward with these short irons, it will be difficult to be hitting down on it, because you'll be scooping them. And when you have the shaft lean forward and we make contact like this, the trajectory will tend to be quite high with lots of backspin and not nearly as much punch and distance. So playing the balls a little bit further back, middle back of your stance. Most of my approach irons, 8 iron, 9 iron, pitching wedge, are played between the middle and the back of my stance. That's my default position, so I can ensure that the hands are slightly ahead of the club and I'm hitting down on them. When we get to a 7 iron or so, this is a 9 iron that I'm holding, by the way. When we get to a 7 iron now, because the lofts have changed and it's kind of a low loft, it's already somewhat almost of a long iron. We can use it kind of both ways. And the 7 iron is going to be played, it can be played actually middle and middle forward, because it is a little bit longer, but the shorter irons we definitely want to play middle or middle back. So ball position is going to be somewhere under your head and about middle back, especially with the shorter irons, so that we can hit down on it. Again, keep in mind that the ball position is not a fixed thing. It will vary sometimes dramatically depending on what kind of lies you have, what the slope is that you're standing on. So these are just general rules of thumb, and considering on a relatively flat lie. But it is variable. Everything in golf really is variable. We're just trying to establish some general rules of thumb and some positions that will help us achieve a better contact by giving us a higher chance or higher probability of putting the club on the ball. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. You can always check out 2 of my other videos here and subscribe here. And we'll pick it up next week with some more on some short approaches.